Hi all, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome today to a video that we are going to be having a more talky discussion style video. Y'all know I love doing this shiz. I've sort of found a rhythm of like philosophical anti-consumerism makeup content with like reviews and other stuff as well. I really get my jollies on. Sort of my favorite thing to do is talk about makeup in a more subjective light than just I'm reviewing this pretty palette, which I love doing as well because there's nothing I love more than beating the face. To a certain degree, it is just makeup, but also to a certain degree, at times it is a bit more than just cosmetics. And as such, today we are going to be talking about some of the most tone-deaf, off-color, controversial makeup product releases. It always amazes me that these companies that have hundreds of thousands of millions or billions of dollars, that they can't take some of that money and do a bit of research to know or even have the common sense that some of these things that they're doing is inappropriate. It's like they're acting like a teenager, and I'm like, for all that you have, you should be at this point a full-fledged adult. Your brain has finished developing, but it doesn't seem like it is because of these things that you're putting out. You got a little issue with the hypothalamus up in here. And I should know because I don't think I even have a hypothalamus. Some of these are really fairly old. We've got two much more recent ones, but I just wanted to take some time and talk about these things because part of the problem is, when it comes to this sort of thing, it's like once, okay, all right, that's a mistake you've made. But then as the years go on and as we become more aware of how off color these things are, you think that with the times we'd learn just not to do them. But that doesn't seem to be the case with some of these companies that want to push the envelope and sort of skirt towards the edge. And I like artistic liberties as well as the next person, but there's artistic liberties and then there's taking something too far. Now, some companies are better at taking criticism and working with it than others are, that we will see on this list, but we're just gonna go right on into it and have a little bit discussion, talky about brands really making bad moves with their artistic choices. We're gonna start off with one that is fairly old. I feel like this is a good example of a starting point when it comes to something that you just, maybe you should have thought it out just a little bit more. But from MAC, a company that I don't own anything from because they're not cruelty-free, would love to have some of their highlighters. But they did this collection. This was a couple at least 5 years ago. And they did this collection, I want to say, I don't think Painted Canyon is the collection, but basically they did a collection that was very similar to the recent Colourpop Sandstone collection, where the artistic influence and inspiration very clearly came from the cultures of varying indigenous people. Getting inspired by something like that is one thing, because the art from these cultures is so beautiful, it's vivid, it's striking. We've got beautiful colors and all sorts of rich, unique detailing, which, like I said, getting artistic inspiration is one thing. But when you take this sort of artistic inspiration and you slap it on packaging, and you have ad campaigns that favor, how shall we say, white people, it looks a lot less like inspirational and sort of promoting and expressing these cultures as it is a level of whitewashing and cultural appropriation. It isn't a celebration of that particular culture. You're just using its art and its artistic influence as a way to market your cosmetics to white chicks that like going to festivals. And then when MAC were called out for it, that's basically what they said. Well, it's a festival collection. It's about being in the desert at Burning Man and Coachella and all that sort of shiz. You know, when clearly a lot of the names of the products were just very, not necessarily culturally insensitive, but culturally evocative of using that sort of imagery and those things that are very key elements to these indigenous people, that it's not a stretch to say that you're literally using this, not necessarily fetishizing it, but you're using it as a way to just sell your makeup. You're not doing it in collaboration with anyone from any of these particular cultures. You know, you're not having it be a cultural experience, because I love when companies collaborate with these people and they do these collections that have just got their culture so beautifully done. But this was just done as a means to use this imagery and this sort of fanciful. It's like using the term gypsy and like, I'm free and spirited, when in reality that is a derogatory term for the Romney-Shaw people. It's like, we don't need to do it, people. It's not fun. It's not fanciful. Stop putting up dream catchers all up in whatever. Stop wearing freaking headdresses to festivals because you think it's gonna look cute on Instagram. So this collection just it's one of those things that really stands out to me, and one of the, probably was happening kind of in my like beginning immersion into makeup, so maybe that's why it's so just like stand out in my mind. But at this point, I feel like with all of this, we should know better than to do something like this. It should be common sense not to take a particular culture's elements and slap that on some packaging and try to tell people it's a festival themed collection. And then we might have sort as well just kind of just touch on the Colourpop Sandstone collection thing, where they came out with this palette and a lot of people were like, the imagery and the names and everything, that's kind of not a good look, Colourpop. And there are a lot of people who voiced distaste for this particular release, and what Colourpop didn't exactly appease anyone. Colourpop was like, oh, we're sorry, we didn't mean to offend anyone. We're still releasing this shiz. We'll maybe potentially fix it for like the restock, but we're not gonna pull this release. We're not gonna bring it back and redo it and make it more tasteful. No. We're just gonna go on ahead with this release, even though it's not like they wouldn't have a plethora of releases to kind of just, you know, they're already releasing so much. Now, having this one delayed for a little bit, I don't think would hurt them that much. And so you have the whole like starting out with doing that and putting it through production and all the way through to release, you know, that's a problem there. And then the fact that they weren't even willing to pull the item, it shows how much they really don't care about the people that their actions are affecting, about the people whose cultures they're using to proc their sales, to have some sort of like aesthetic. Like, I'm as much of like a boho free spirit as the next person, but you don't have to fetishize or appropriate someone else's culture for you to have that. I'll put on my witchy hat and my flowy bell bottoms, and that's what I'm doing. I don't have to wear other culture stuff or use things influenced by them but aren't a credit. That's one thing. When these companies use this sort of imagery and these namings and things that are clearly drawn from these cultures, they aren't given any credit. They just do it. And they're like, look at this cute little culturally themed inspired collection. Isn't it fun and whimsical? There isn't any, well, we specifically drew inspiration from this particular culture's this kind of art or this sort of thing here. And that's why we chose to input it in this. No, there ain't none of that. They just stripping this shiz off the whatever and putting it on their packaging and calling it a collection. I would have so much more respect for these sort of releases if they were doing it in a culturally appreciative way. You know, if it was a collection based on the richness of one of these cultures and based off of the history and things like that, that's good. That is drawing people in to learn information about these cultures and sort of having that appreciation instead of just literally taking the ding dang thing and slapping it on some stuff and telling people that, oh, you know, it's a flowy, whatever, fun native palette. It is just and there's so many more, this video is going a little bit different than I thought, but there's so many more layers to this sort of tone-deaf marketing than just sort of, oh, it's a poor choice on the makeup company's part. It has within it, this is such an excellent example of like privilege and like white tone-deaf ignorance, because we shouldn't even be like starting to think that this is okay. Like, we shouldn't be like, oh yeah, like there shouldn't be a boardroom meeting filled with a bunch of white people and someone raises their hands and says, yes, we need to use this culture's imagery in our packaging. And then the rest of people go like, ah, yes, why of course, because we're too unoriginal to come up with anything on our own. We have to rip it from another culture's stuff. And so that just has within it a layer of privilege that they even feel like they can just do it, that there aren't going to be any repercussions for these distasteful actions. It's really annoying and frustrating because they're just out here like they don't care. They're like, okay, all right, we're doing it and we're getting our money and everything like that. So just the whole many different layers that are beneath these sorts of actions and these sorts of collections go so beyond just the product itself. There are ingrained issues that have led up to these things happening. And while we're talking on this and Colourpop's not so good reaction and response to the backlash for this collection, let's talk about Fenty Beauty. I was filming an anti-haul and they teased one of the new shades for their Kilowatt Freestyle highlighters, and the shade was Geisha Chic. I filmed that anti-haul and I was like, you know, I feel like, especially for this company that is spearheaded for people of the deep, dark, delicious melanin, it's Rihanna's makeup brand, you sort of expect a more astute level of awareness for this sort of thing. So I had all sorts of like, I'm not vibing with this. I don't think this is cool. And a lot of other people didn't either. But what Fenty Beauty did is they didn't release the shade with that name. They pulled it back. And then they waited and they renamed it and then they released it. They admitted their cultural fetishization, the insensitivity and the ignorance of sort of the name. They took the feedback. They made a statement to be more knowledgeable in the future about really looking into these things before just slapping sort of a trendy, whatever, culturally artistic name on something. And that's how companies really should behave when we shouldn't get to the point where we have to be called out for something like this anyway. But if we reach that point, we really ought to, do it like this. Take the consideration. Try to understand that these things where you're fetishizing certain aspects of other people's cultures is wrong. It's wrong. It shouldn't be done in a day-to-day basis, and it really shouldn't be done to market cosmetics to people. I mean, that's sort of my thing, where it's like, it's just makeup. You shouldn't have to name it something like this for it to be revolutionary or eye-catching. And that's when we also realize and understand that it does go beyond it just being makeup. There are a lot more layers to development and companies behind these things, because in all reality, And in all honesty, makeup companies care about making money. I mean, any business does. And so while we like to think that maybe these companies, are listening or would have the forethought to not do something like this, the reality is what they care about is the bottom dollar. But it was really, really good on Fenty Beauty's part to see the backlash that was created by naming this shade. They did an excellent thing by not releasing it, waiting, renaming it, and then re-releasing it. All right, we're going to talk about probably the most recent one when doing this. Plouise, a company that I have kind of sort of maybe wanted to get into. They released one palette that had like blues and greens and shiz that I really wanted to dip my toes into. I'm not gonna do it now because they're an incredibly tone-deaf brand. But apparently the owner of Plouise was in some sort of way caught out for using the N-word, which is a really, really, really bad word and should not be used in any extent. I don't want to hear, oh, I did it in the heat of the moment. If it's not in your brain to say, it's not going to happen in the heat of the moment. It's there before the heat of the moment happened. Like, even in the heat of the moment, we don't randomly, I'm not going to get into an argument and suddenly scream out supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It's not in my brain. It's not in my memory banks. So to say, oh, it's the heat of the moment or it just happened once, it has to be there. It has to be stored in a way that means it's going to come out, and heat of the moment really just shows what you're willing to say in real life. So that happened, and instead of standing up, acknowledging, owning your whatevers, and being like, yeah, I said it. That is a awful, awful word that I should not have said. I'm a moron for making that mistake. I'm sorry. In the future, I will try to do better. No. We're going to take ourselves, we're going to buy some paint in the color Victim, and we're going to slather it all down our body, and we are going to make a canceled collection, which is a collection that is all focused around the horrible, devastating, and career-ending influences of cancel culture. I admit, I have my issues with cancel culture. I think that cancel culture can be just as toxic as some of the people are trying to cancel. But you have to understand how this sort of thing looks to a normal, rational human being that wouldn't say that word in the first place. It's sort of in the same way of Jaclyn Hill doing her canceled Halloween costume. It really is kind of is red herring the right term? It's a bait and switch where instead of focusing on the thing they've done wrong, we're directing the attention toward this costume. We're directing our attention toward this collection, and we're making it about absolutely something else than what was the problem to begin with. We're not talking about why this person is in trouble. We have this collection that is based and talking about how horrible. It's basically pulling out this victim card when you are not. You are absolutely not the victim. You are a privileged white person who is trying to get away with saying a hideously, absolutely disgusting, derogatory term. So you're going to make a collection. And I want to say, wasn't this eyeshadow palette teased the color story before this whole thing went down? And suddenly now it's the canceled collection? Did we have this neutral eyeshadow palette that was going to come out in a certain way, and then this happened, and suddenly we had to get the PR people in here, and we completely rebranded this release? I don't know if that's right. It's kind of just a thought, whatever in my mind. Definitely let me know down below, but I could have sworn I saw the palette teased before we knew what the collection was. And so to sort of have this side of privilege to be like, all right, I got cut out for doing something really bad. It's like none of these people, when they do these bad things, they're just like, no, don't you make it about me. Don't you tell me what I've done wrong. It's about you being the nasty person, wanting to cancel me, wanting to end my career. Everyone is so cruel and harsh, and everyone's so quick to just jump on people who make a single mistake, even though I'm not admitting that I made a mistake. I'm just funneling all of my narcissism victimhood into a cancel culture collection. It's not that we're going out to just cancel everybody. We would just like you to not use those words. See, this is the whole thing. If you don't do anything bad, if you don't lie, you don't have anything to hide. I understand we are all human. We all make mistakes. I make mistakes. I've done things that I'm not proud of. Own up to that shiz. Promise that you're gonna do better and be better in the future. Instead, doing this whole collection thing shows that you don't actually want to be better. You're fine with how you are. You think what you did was fine, and you're putting all of the blame for your action onto the community that isn't happy with your nasty behavior. It's not because you're famous. It's not because of whatever. It's because that's not good. That's not cool. That's not the bad. It shouldn't be a thing. And all honestly, maybe I'm extreme. I feel like that name should be like illegal. Like we should be given a fine if we're heard saying that shit. Just don't do it. Especially if you're, just don't. Stop with the whiteness. Just the fact that it was actually done in the first place, and then the way that it was responded to with just this whole, like I said, it was just this bait and switch of like, oh, I'm in trouble, cancel culture, which that's great. I feel like we should have a discussion about cancel culture, but definitely not through your stupid tone-deaf collection. I was gonna get into the brand, but after this, I'm just like, no, I'm not giving your stupid butt any money. I ain't having that shiz. It's not happening. That really just rubbed me the wrong way and was sort of a kind of testament to the untouchability, to the privileged position that a lot of these influencers and brand owners kind of hold themselves to, which is, disturbing in and of itself. I hate it when they take this and they blow it up into this huge thing when just in reality, it's like, just apologize, just give us an apology. Admit that you did wrong. Don't turn it into a whole thing and make it a flippity-flapping collection. Do not tell me that before this happened that your collection was gonna be canceled. I mean, it's just so stupid and contrived and self-centered because they're all like, oh, extra, Plouise is canceled. I'm like, you're gonna be after this shiz. Good job. Ain't nobody gonna buy your crap now. I mean, come on. Just these people need to find a better way of dealing with it. They just need to not do it in the first place. I mean, common sense, being a decent human being that doesn't use derogatory terms used for other people, you'd think that would just be sort of an instinctual thing, but I guess not. Now I'm going to talk about one that I did sort of discuss already in an anti-haul. I'm not sure which one. If I can remember, I will link it down below so you can sort of hear me talk about it in that section there. But we're going to talk about a less expensive brand, BH Cosmetic, which is a brand that has products that I like, not like a huge amount. Those Sweet Shop eyeshadow palettes should not have been limited edition. For that alone, they need to be held to the fire. But then they decided to do a Halloween themed collection, which was really sort of just this ode to crazy girl meme. Which, I mean, I discussed in the anti-haul that being a crazy person isn't a personality trait. It shouldn't be given a pedestal in the form of a makeup collection, especially since, see, this is the thing that got me about it. Like, it was gonna be Halloween themed. There are so many spooky elements out there that you had so many options to choose from, and you decided to go with crazy chick. And that is such a trivializing thing. It's sort of, It's taken something that has already been stigmatized for so many years. Recently, we've been starting to come to the forefront about mental health, understanding it, acknowledging it, accepting it, and then to have a company do a release like this that's like, let's just take all of this hard work we've done to make it a serious and significant thing, and let's just throw that shiz in the trash and let's continue to abuse the trope of a crazy chick. 'Cause your girl is bipolar. I got the depression. I got the anxiety. I got I know what it's like to be the crazy chick, and it's not fun giggles and smiles. It's being aware of all your awful self-destructive habits while still doing them, but being self-aware and feeling absolutely awful while you're doing them, but being unable to stop them. It's a frustrating thing. And it doesn't need to be taken and made this cute little aesthetic theme. Like, for Pete's, I mean, just what? Like I said with a lot of these, I love a weird source of artistic inspiration as much as the next person. But don't take artistic inspiration from things that are going to be detrimental to other people that thing directly affects. You know, it's like, I don't know what the shade names are like, whatever, but it's like if someone were to come out with an eyeshadow and name it bipolar, it's like, I'm wearing bipolar on my eyelids. No! Bipolar is literally this roller coaster of you're like riding high and you're going right, you're like, I can do everything, and then you crash, and then you sleep for 3 days. And then as you're going about the sleeping for 3 days, you're not actually sleeping or resting because your anxiety is keeping you from fully, resting, because you're like, well, you're an awful, terrible piece of whatever for not doing anything. But then your depression's like, well, you're already a terrible piece of whatever, so why bother doing anything? The trivializing of these significant and important things for the sake of sort of aesthetic is really frustrating and really off color and in poor taste. Someone's struggle, someone's mental illness, someone's non-atypical behavior is not your makeup collection. And I understand to a certain degree people are going to be like, well, it's just makeup. And I'm like, yeah, it is just makeup, but at the same time, it can be just makeup without being whatever the flip this is. We expect brands to do better because that's sort of just common sense to not take other people's trials and tribulations and use them as your marketing scheme behind a Halloween collection. Feeling like you're being crazy is a real thing, and it's not something that I feel the need to have personified in an eyeshadow. Give me like a old classic slasher horror film collection. Give me spooky, witchy, classy, old Hollywood vamp ladies collection. Don't give me a collection that is glorifying some of the abusive traits of certain mental illnesses and calling it a fun, crazy aesthetic. So many things they could have done that would have been better. And it just really gets me, because it's just like this whole, we've worked so hard to come this far to learn that mental illness is a illness. And then we have collections like this that are just like, psychotic crazy person. Oh, I'm Harley Quinn. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. I think it's in incredibly poor taste. But if there's anything I've learned all my time here on this platform, it's that companies don't learn. They really don't. Well, sometimes they do. We did discuss Fenty Beauty, but for the most part, big, major, giant companies just like to keep wilding out here and doing whatever the flip they want. I'm gonna have to end this there. I have got other things I can talk about. I really enjoy doing these talky, more introspective videos. I love doing my other beauty content too, but I also like drawing awareness to things that I think are toxic or inappropriate things that, brands like to think they can get away with. Obviously, I would love to hear what you all have to say about these things that I've talked about today. Let me know down below some of the most, controversial, off-color, or in poor taste makeup that you think have been released. I would love to know, those things from you, things that maybe I can discuss in my next video. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!